This episode is brought to you by Danish Creamery. Level up any dish with a BCU secret weapon that we found in a small batch premium butter. For over a century, Danish Farms has been perfecting a product that unlocks what extra churned, rich, and delicious butter can do to take your food to another caliber. Today, we'll be making the 243-layer butter toast using Danish Creamery's European unsalted butter. For more info on Danish Creamery, head to the link in the description. Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Anything with Alvin. This time we're going to be making the 243-layer melaleuca butter toast that I've seen in many Taiwanese food videos. As a late night food video enjoyer, this one has popped up many times and I've always been curious to see how it's been made and how it tastes. We're going to need a lot of butter. For this kind of food where there's not too much other seasoning, the butter flavor really needs to come through, so it's important to use high quality butter. Now in the reference video that we're using, they're not showing exact measurements, so we're going to have to try and guess what kind of dough they're making here. After some investigating, we decided to go with a brioche style dough. So for our dry ingredients, we're combining 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of bread flour, 1/2 cup of dry milk powder, which can be seen used in the video to add that extra milky flavor in the bread, 6 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, and 1.5 tablespoons of instant yeast. Those first get whisked together, and then we're going to put that in our stand mixer and combine that with 6 whole eggs, 1/2 cup of cream, and stream in 1/4 cup of whole milk. Once the dough starts to come together, we're going to get our first batch of butter ready for this recipe. We're going to take 2 sticks of salted butter and cut them into about 1-inch little square pieces. This butter is now going to get slowly folded and added into the mix, a couple pieces at a time, until it is finally incorporated. Now the mixing on this dough is no joke. This took about 10 to 15 minutes of total mixing, which did put our mixer in a bit of a heat mess, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now the dough is nice, sticky, and supple. We're gonna go ahead, tuck this into a bowl, and put that into a container to proof for about an hour or so. In the butter toast video from Taiwan, they use a very similar lamination technique akin to croissant making, where they laminate the dough. So that means we're going to need to make a big butter block. Now this butter is 85% butter fat, European style, with a lot more of a richer taste and texture, which is going to make this butter block and end result butter toast a whole lot more flavorful and easier to peel apart like they do in the video. So I'm really happy that we're using Danish Creamery butter for this. I'm taking 4 sticks of this unsalted butter, putting them onto a sheet of parchment paper, placing another sheet of parchment paper on top, and slamming it down with a rolling pin until it starts to spread out and become one solid mass. Once the butter has spread out a bit, we're going to go ahead and even this out with a rolling pin and then eventually transfer this to some saran wrap so that we can go ahead and fold over the edges to make more of a rectangle shape. Then this gets another push with the rolling pin until all the edges have been smoothed out, and this butter block is going to go into the fridge to solidify. Our dough is back after its first proof, increased in size. We're going to go ahead and reshape and proof this one more time, covered in saran wrap. Now we do have some more downtime, and I thought it'd be fun to actually make a pastry cream to go along with this toast. So I thought it'd be fun to make a brown butter pastry cream. Now one of the things to know about me is that one, I'm a huge fan of butter, but I am a huger fan of brown butter, and using higher quality butter actually results in a much more flavorful and rich brown butter. So we're going to go ahead and cube up 4 tablespoons of butter and put that into a pan to melt and brown. Now I like to do it over a medium-low heat as to not get it too dark. Once we've gotten that to its correct stage, this goes off the heat. We make the rest of our pastry cream, combining 1/2 cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 4 egg yolks until this paste has been nicely whipped and fluffy. Then we're going to slowly stream in 2 cups of whole milk and cook this over medium heat, whisking the entire time until the pastry cream is started to thicken and started to slowly bubble when the whisk is removed. Now this pastry cream gets removed from the heat, and we go ahead and add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla and the rest of our brown butter. After passing this mixture through a fine mesh sieve into a bowl over an ice bath to chill this quickly, we gotta give this a taste. And yes, the brown butter flavor is strong, more aromatic and unctuous than usual. This is going to go ahead and get some plastic wrap on the top so the skin doesn't form, and go into the fridge to cool for later. Now that our dough is finished proofing, we're going to go ahead and roll that out on our board and fold in our butter block, making sure that the dough is large enough to receive this butter block. After wrapping the dough around the sides of the butter, we're going to go ahead and trim any large portions that are probably just going to get all weird. Go ahead and chill this one more time. It's important to work with this dough while it's cold so that the butter doesn't, create a huge mess. So we're going to go ahead ahead and take this out after it's cold, roll it out again, and fold this into 3 to start creating those nice layers. Fold it over, make sure all the edges are tight, go back in the fridge and repeat this process about 4 times until we go from 3 layers to 9 layers to 27 layers to 81 layers to 243 layers. Now there were some patches that got exposed during the process, so I patched them up with a little bit of flour to make sure everybody is happy. Once our layered dough is ready, we're going to go ahead, chill this one more time, take it out, cut this into 4 squares, remove any of the non-trimmed edges, put 2 of these squares on top of each other into our nice cube pans that we found online that seem to be used to make these bread toast things. These are going to go ahead and proof overnight, and we're going to come back tomorrow to finish this. It is now day 2. This is what our little toast cubes look like. We're going to go ahead and proof these at room temperature to get the rise that they need. And while that's proofing, we're going to go ahead and use up all these scraps that we trimmed off. Now I really don't like throwing these away after making something that's pastry related, and I thought we could make some really fun things with it. So we're going to take this proofed croissant dough, essentially, take some granulated sugar, sprinkle that all over, and roll these around until we have pressed essentially a lot of sugar into the dough itself. We're going to take these strips and do almost like one of those origami folds and place them into a large muffin tin type vessel and essentially make kouign-amann, a version of caramelized French style pastries that are made with sugared laminated dough. Perfect for this kind of scrap, because I think the best part is that they don't need to look pretty. Once these go into the pan, we're going to go ahead and bake these at about 400 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes until they're beautifully risen, golden brown, caramelized, and quite awesome. These are one of my favorite pastries in the world, and I learned that the best part about these is actually the bottom, where all the sugar and butter collects and turns into a caramel that beautifully coats a glassy surface. Let's go ahead and tear one of these open for a little inside look, shall we? It tastes quite delicious. You got caramelized crunchy pastry on the outside, soft fluffy rich dough on the inside. This is looking quite promising. Now on to the main event. Our dough has fully proofed in our cube trays. You can see that the level has risen quite a lot, so we're going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of sugar on top as the final touch before putting these in the oven at about 425 degrees, which is what they converted from Celsius to Fahrenheit based on the original reference video. They baked it pretty hot. They had like a 240 to 260 range in their oven, so I think that converts to about the same temperature. After baking for about 45 minutes, we're going to go ahead and unveil these things. Now to be honest, I definitely think we overbaked these a bit. Whether it was too hot or too long, the sugar on the edges got a little too dark for my kind of taste, so I think we could have definitely lowered it the whole time. Maybe it was because of the high fat content in the dough, maybe it was because of the sugar I sprinkled on top. This came out extra dark and crusty, which not exactly is a bad thing. It might have prevented the full rise that we wanted because we baked it super hot, but I'm still curious to see how these layers turned out. Well, the inside I think is still very, very beautiful. If you cut it open, you can see a lot of the layers, even though not as clearly as defined as the ones from the source video. But if we go ahead and try to peel off a layer, yep, we can still do that. Here's another cross section just to examine those up close. I think using a brioche dough might have been too much fat for the actual recipe itself. You should have used more of a bread-like dough. That way the butter folded in could have a more springier texture. But hey, you live and you learn. The best thing is it smells like butter, tastes like butter, and I think that is really cool. And we also get to serve it with this brown butter pastry cream, which actually makes this extremely delicious. Now this is really fun to eat with your hands. You just peel off a layer, go ahead and dunk it in some pastry cream. This gives me the same satisfaction as taking a tortilla and dipping in a huge chunk of guac when no one's looking. Except people are looking this time, and it's not tortilla or guac, it's butter toast and pastry cream, which I could argue is better. What's surprising is that the brown butter pastry cream actually makes this taste light, which is an oxymoron because 80% of this recipe is butter and you can really taste that, but somehow it feels like I'm on a diet. Now for the best part, I gotta share this with everybody else in the studio. Thanks again to our sponsor Danish Creamery for bringing you this episode of Anything with Alvin. If you're looking for a dish game changer, consider Danish Creamery butter and check it on the link in the description.